that is a massive trauma for you.
Well, and I didn't realize, like, because it came to me and I was like, why would I remember this? Because I'm putting all this energy to like rewire. And I don't know what to make of it still. So I'm like, this has literally happened to me last week. So I'm just curious if you can play with that as an example.
Yeah. I mean, the way I would play with this, I would actually sit with that emotion, right? Most men, we don't like to sit with the emotion. Now, we could sit too long with the emotion, and then it could just completely take over our lives, and our testosterone drops, our estrogen rises, and our whole body gets screwed up, right? That's what ends up happening. And at a certain level, you would say to a man, you have to suck it up and do it. That's how we're wired. We have to do things. But in the context of this, you're sitting with it. There's shame around that. Like, if you think about it, you have to give yourself permission.
Hey, Gino, welcome. Thank you for being here with us on Remember You. We appreciate your time, and we're super excited to have you on the show today. For the audience who doesn't know Gino, he is the co-founder of Jake and Gino, Barbaro 36, a certified money coach, best-selling author, and a guy who's scaled a multi-million-dollar portfolio, 450 million. Wow. We're really excited to have you here. And by the end of the show, we hope that you'll share with our listeners how to accomplish happy money and have an awesome family legacy. So welcome. And let's start there. You not only talk about how to build a legacy, but also how to handle money so that it's happy. What exactly does that mean? And tell me a little bit about it.
First and foremost, thanks for having me on. I want to say hi to both of you. It's a great platform to be able to talk about money. And the reason why I started the Happy Money conversation, I was able to interview a gentleman named Ken Honda. For those of you that don't know who Ken Honda is, he is the Japanese guru. He literally sold over 8 million copies of the book Happy Money. And after the podcast, he said to me, Gino, in his Japanese accent, you need to write happy money, happy properties, happy family. And I'm like, I just don't want to write about properties anymore. I love real estate, but that's not where my heart's taking me. I want to talk about money, family, and that thing called legacy. Because people confuse legacy. They think legacy is something you leave behind. And I've learned over the years, it's something that you activate today. So when you put all three of those together, for you to leave a happy legacy, in my opinion, you really need to know what happy money is. You need to know how to create a happy family. And that will ultimately lead to a happy legacy. And specifically to your question, what happy money is, the easiest way for me to define it is by defining what unhappy money is. Because a lot of us live there, Christina. I had a restaurant for years, and I knew what unhappy money was. Going to a job, dreading it, feeling like you're on a treadmill, hiding in the restaurant, not wanting to go out to talk to customers. It's just negative, draining, painful energy. It's I need this job for a paycheck. And we all have to go through that. For you to get to happy money, I think most of us have to earn unhappy money. And I made the shift to happy money when I realized, wow, I don't have to live that way. I can follow my passions. I just have to figure out what it is that I want, because most of us don't know what we don't want. I didn't want to be there, but I really was not clear on what I did want. And once I understood the clarity and what I was, going towards, I could actually map out what happy money looked like to me.
So how did you accomplish that? How did you figure that out?
Well, the easy answer for me was I had two amazing partners or people in my corner. The first one is my wife. I mean, she's just an incredible person. I have to say, she's not going to listen to this because I'm going to give her a lot of kudos here. And if she hears it, she'll be like, I tease her all the time. We've done a podcast for 7 years. We have 6 kids. Mm-hmm. She's homeschooled 6 children. She's just incredible. 4 home births. She figures it out. She knows what to do. She's been an advocate for me. She's given me permission to do it. When I went home one night from the restaurant, I said, Julia, I can't do this anymore. This is killing me. I smelled like garlic. I was burned out. I did. It just was awful. And I remember that being in the laundry room, just having that sorrow and that sadness. And I said to her, do you mind if I just leave the restaurant and we move to Florida? And she looked at me 3 seconds later. She said, sure. But when she said yes to me, it was like the weight had falling off my shoulders, but at the same time, that responsibility was really huge. So I all of a sudden became radically accountable to that. Yes, I can't go around and sit on my couch watching Netflix in my underwear, hanging out. I have to put in the work. I can't go and play golf on the weekends. I've got to learn this real estate thing. I've got to learn how to work with happy money and understand that. I think the second point was my business partner, Jake. Incredible person also. I wouldn't have been able to be where I am without him. And I think the third component, to answer your question and to really put a nice bookend on it, it really comes down to personal development. It comes down to coaching. It comes down to getting around mentors. It comes down to investing in yourself. And if you're not willing to do that, and if you're not willing to escape being a victim like I was back in '08, blaming Bush, blaming Obama, blaming the Great Recession, I was there. Once I stopped that and I became clear and I said, it's not about them. Most of that is external. I can't control that. What I can control is internal. How do I do that? And once you start learning about being personal, about that personal development journey, and about the responsibility, and about the tools you need to learn, and about the value that you're supposed to create for the economy, because the more value you create, the more dollars you make. The more dollars you make, the more impact you can make. Once you start putting those dots together and it's, wow, I have responsibility for that. I can take control of that. Once you understand that, there's a glimmer of hope. To me, there was like, wow, I can really learn how to do this stuff. That's how people have been doing it.
And so in your book that you so graciously gave me a copy of, thank you, I loved it, you said something about personal development, and you just said it again, and you spent quite a bit of money on personal development. Which ones made the most impact for you?
Wow. On the personal development side, Christina, I would say the ones about life coaching. I went to become a life coach probably back in 2013. Back then, it was more of the woo-woo kind of thing. My wife used to make fun of me about it. She's like, you're going to be a life coach? And I ultimately became a life coach. And I remember going to an event one day, and I was teaching this real estate event in New Jersey, and I brought her with me. And we're in this basement. There's about 50 real estate investors. And I put this presentation together. It was a little bit of life coaching, a little bit of real estate. But at the end of the event, there were gentlemen, people coming up to my wife and just saying to her, thank you for sharing your husband. He's just changed my life. And there's some guys actually crying. And she looks at me and she goes, what do you do for a living? I don't understand. I said, Julia, I'm a life coach. And from there, she just stopped and she said to herself, I actually had to look up what life coaching was. And basically what life coaching is, it's just a bunch of skills you learn. It's about listening intuitively to somebody, asking people the right questions, having tactile empathy, as Chris Voss says, seeking first to understand, then to be understood, learning what goals are, learning how to help somebody craft goals, right? Life coaching to me was life-changing because I needed it in my journey. And then obviously the other types of coaching, I've been into real estate coaching, how to make money in real estate. I've done scaling up coaching. You know, you don't come out of the womb, unfortunately, knowing how to scale a portfolio. I had to go out and spend a ton of money to do that. And speaker coaching, I've been trying to work on my communication skills, negotiation skills. There's so many skills. There's a plethora of skills that I think people at a base level should really learn. And that is the personal development. Everyone should get into life coaching and learn those skills. Everyone should become a better communicator. Everyone should learn at least a base level of personal finance, and everyone should understand that negotiation is so important. So to really answer your question fully, I think those skills is what I ended up really leaning into and really helping me on my journey.
And I know you said something about earlier about, the more service that you have to people, obviously getting those skills is also a service to yourself, right? So first what I'm hearing is invested in yourself so that then you could build something that was of service to others. And then you also are able to bring more happy money into your life. So tell me, I think there was a story about your mindset flip there where, you used to pay the electrical bill and you're like mad or angry. I don't know if that's maybe the right word. I think you did talk a lot about anger in your book. So you were angry and you're like, oh, why is this so much? I have 6 kids and a wife at home and all these things. And you flipped the way you thought about that bill to something different. And what did that do for you?
Christina, I think the right word is effing pissed. Now, at the time, right? You're being very nice to me. I used to get, and I still get these bills, and we use the word triggered a lot in society, and that's what a bill would do to me. But what we need to do is, if you're listening to this, when that happens, why is that happening? It took me so long to understand that, and I had to go back into my childhood. Another thing that I learned was money coaching. I became a certified money coach about a year ago, and understanding what happened in my childhood, how my patterns, my behaviors, my beliefs, the things I heard about money when I was a young kid, how that impacted me, and how at a certain level, we start working towards that as we're adults. We start making decisions on money based upon those unconscious behaviors and beliefs. So for me, having two immigrant parents, always hearing save, 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 save for a rainy day, never for a sunny day. Don't know why, but having that scarcity mindset, every time a bill came in, I was like, holy crap, I got to pay this. I have this money in the bank. I can't let this money go to pay for that thing. And I realized at some point, wow, I should be grateful. I can afford to have Armani come today to clean my pool. I can afford that bill. I can enjoy that. I don't have to do something that I don't like. And I started to understand that. And to me, the revelation was I should start enjoying my money. I wasn't raised, unfortunately, and this may resonate with a lot of people listening to this, to really enjoy my money. I had some shame, some guilt around money, and some fear around money. And as you have that as your blueprint around money, even though you may become wealthy, are you truly wealthy? Are you out there actually using money what it's intended for? If you understand that money is just a tool and you're able to use it in any fashion that you like and you have control over it, everything changes. So when a bill does come, I still say to myself, can we pay a little bit less? But at the same time, the electric bill is allowing this conversation to happen. In more than half the world, they're having rolling blackouts. They don't have access to water. There's so many things that we take granted for. And for me, I'm trying to actually be more mindful of being more grateful. So for me, making happy money and being able to spend it on those quote unquote happy bills has allowed me to enjoy my money. And that's what I want people listening to this. Just try to enjoy the money. And it may be hard. You may have to peel back a lot of those layers, but I promise once you start peeling back those layers, you're going to want to go out there and make more happy money.
So you just told us earlier that you were like Steve the Saver, I think that you have. So tell us a little bit more about the 4 money personas and how do we, if our listeners, as they're resonating with those 4 money personas, can you kind of go through what we can do for each persona to help us have more happy money?
I love that question. I'm going to really reframe this into the money coaching because in money coaching, we expanded it. The woman named Deborah Price came up with something called an archetype. And I love her archetype because it's a picture. It's a character inside of us that helps us think, behave, act towards money. And there's 8 archetypes. I'll go through them really quick. What I want people to understand is they're not good or bad per se, right? It's just you don't want certain personas driving your money decisions. The first one we'll go with is the warrior. The warrior is that person I had been talking to you about. He's responsible. She's responsible. All about getting it done. Diligent. You send over questions. I'm going to get the questions done. We're going to do the recording. The warrior is the driven person. He or she is driving the car. Right next to the warrior is the magician. He or she is that person who is going to tell you, yes, that's your sole purpose. Gino, you need to be on this podcast. This is what you're all about. This is how you're going to create happy money. When the warrior and the magician work together, it is magic. It is power. If only the warrior is making those decisions, the warrior can get burned out. He's just doing and doing and doing. But is he going to his or her fullest extent? Not really. But when they put the why together with the actions, it's really incredible. Now, the person in the back seat, that persona is called the creator artist. Now, the creator artist is the one who is really averse to money. They really don't want to deal with money, but they've got so much creativity. For me, the creator artist, I like to sing opera. I'm Italian. My last name ends in O. I didn't know all Italians learn how to sing opera until I started like 4 years ago. That's my creator type. I like to garden. I like to do certain things that are creative. Now, most people stifle that creativity because they don't have the time. They're only focused on making the money. But you need the creator artist to come out and to help the warrior and the magician enact and enable. But you don't want the creator artist driving the car because they're not good with money. Now, in the trunk, you have the other 5 archetypes. You have the victim, you have the innocent, you have the fool, you have the martyr, and there's one more. I can't think of the other one. What's the other one? Well, they're all back there, right? And I forgot the other one because I was the other one early on in life. It's the tyrant, right? The tyrant is classic person who, and it could be a self-tyrant or just tyrannical. Think of a boss who's just dictatorial. You have to have it your way, but you're being a tyrant with your money. Like early on in our relationship with my wife, I would say, we can't spend money. We have to save. So it was more of a self-tyrant, but it was coming out of fear. It was coming out of frustration. It was coming out of shame, sadness, whatever it was. You don't want the tyrant driving the car all the time. Every now and again, he or she can make a decision, but if they're always making decisions for money, it's not going to lead to happy money. The innocent, if the innocent is making those decisions, you can't have the innocent making money decisions because that person is going to make it. They're not going to make decisions. They're going to have their head in the sand. Now, every now and again, the innocent can pop out of the trunk and say, hey, Julia, can you make that decision for me? Great, that's fine. The victim, well, what happens when the victim's driving the car? I had the victim drive my car for years. I was constantly blaming other people, constantly not making decisions, always wallowing in sadness. That I didn't want that. Now the martyr is great. The martyr is compassionate. The martyr is wise. The martyr likes to share and to give. But what happens if the martyr's driving the car all the time? If you're creating wealth, all of a sudden you may just want to give all the wealth away and not really be a steward of the wealth. That's not a good or bad thing, but do you want the martyr driving the car all the time? And that's why when you look at the personas or the archetypes through that lens, you'll start to understand, where do you resonate? What archetype is predominant in your life? For me, early on, when I did my money quiz, I saw that I had a lot of tyrant in me early on. I had a lot of warrior. I had some creator artist, some martyr, but I had shed the victim and I had shed the innocent because it was my role. My role early on in our marriage was I need to make the money decisions. I need to drive the car. So for anyone listening to this, what do you resonate with? I mean, where are you stuck at with money? Because like I said, if you are a creator artist and you love to create and you love to paint, but then it comes time to sell your artwork, are you going to sell your artwork? Are you going to go back and go, I really can't do that? And it's a difficult decision. But once you start looking at it through the lens, then you'll start understanding why you're having, difficulty and why you're having problems making those money decisions.
So I'm as I was listening to you, I was kind of resonating with two. So I'll put myself out there for the listeners because I love to tell stories, and then maybe it'll help somebody. So I have this creative spark. I created like this podcast. I've created companies and sold them, and I love to create things. I can get stuck in the creator, and I have a hard time saying, well, I just want to give this away because I know people need it, and I want them to be excited about it and happy and all these things. And then I have my husband who will come in and say, dude, you've been sitting in your office for 8 hours creating and talking to people, but not making any money, and you could have spent that 8 hours with our family. So how do you say something like me? I do resonate a little bit with the warrior though too, where I can put my head down and just go do something and make it happen. And I tend to get burnt out and resentful then sometimes. So what would you tell somebody like me to do?
Well, it's great. I mean, I would tell you to get some money coaching. I am a money coach. And what I would say is what you need to do, I think what to start off with is you need to create a money bio. I mean, think of your history. Let's go back into your past. And for the listeners, you can do this right now. And think of your first money memory. And from that, every year, try to think of money memories. I'll share one with you real quick. My very first one, I was 5 years old. I'm with my grandmother, and we're going to the grocery store. And back then, there were no credit cards. It was only cash. My grandmother spoke very little English. We go to the grocery store, and I see this bag of toy soldiers. And I want these toy soldiers really bad. And I remember them. They were shiny. And I said to Grandma in Italian, can we buy them? And she said, Tesoro, sweetheart, I don't have the money right now. When Mom comes to pick you up, we'll come back and buy them. And all I remember at 5 years old was, I'm never going to buy these soldiers. We can't afford it. I went home. I don't even remember if my mom brought me back to the store to buy those toy soldiers. What created at that point at my 5-year-old little brain is what we call the financial flashpoint. That is an emotional memory around money. Now, as I got older, I started reflecting back on that story. For me, that story meant if I don't get something right now, I'm not going to get it, right? I am not going to get it. I can't afford money. I'm shameful. I am poor. So I have to save money just in case I might want to get something. So you're seeing all those emotions wrapped around that individual emotion. But as I went on, I created obviously other memories. So if you're listening to this, start thinking of some of the financial flashpoints, because it's pretty incredible to talk to somebody in their 30s that has $300,000 in the bank and they say they can't afford a $50 item. It's like, bro, really? Until you start understanding that it's something, it's the fear. It's like, oh, wow. And I get that sometimes also. I'll check my emails and I'm like, I have to respond to that person or else I'm not going to do it. And it's really weird how that is. But put that towards money. And once you start seeing that towards money and you start making those decisions based on money, based on that little 5-year-old, it's really incredible to start making those revelations and start looking at that journey and start healing from that journey. I'm not that 5-year-old little boy anymore. Grandma couldn't afford them. That's okay. You don't have to make decisions based on that. Where are you right now? To me, it was revelatory, as they say.
So, and as part of your coaching program, so say I resonate a little bit with what you're talking about, where it's like we have a lot of money in the bank, we have a lot of investments, and then sometimes I'm like, well, I don't really want to buy that because what if I need it or something like that. So what would you tell somebody like me to start doing to overcome that?
Yeah, I wouldn't tell you to do anything specifically because that's not the job of a coach. What I would do is I would create first that money bio. Then we do something called a mother-father mirror. Right now, I'm taking financial therapy. They call this a genogram, which is really a money tree of your family history. And all of a sudden, we live in a system. Our family's a system. What happens is, as a child, you start creating these money patterns based on people in your family. Typically, it's your mother, your father, or maybe another individual like a grandparent or an aunt. And you start seeing the positives and negatives that you took from them. And for me, the positives I took from my mother, entrepreneurial, great saver, hard worker. But there were negatives as well, negative patterns, being afraid, staying small, having fear. Those patterns I took from my mom, those are the patterns that I want to work on. Now, my dad had negative patterns. He liked to play lotto. He liked to gamble, but I didn't take those patterns from him. What I would say is if you have any patterns from your parents and you're seeing it, those are the patterns that I would at least acknowledge, and let's start talking about those patterns. And that was really helpful for me because I'm like, Mom, why do we have to save all the time? Why can't we enjoy our money? Like, you're telling me to save this money, but I need to invest this money. And it was holding me back from investing in assets because my blueprint, my mentality was I was taking it from her. So once I understood that was hers and I could keep it, or I can work on it. That's what I want people to do. I want people to see these patterns and to make sure that are they empowering or are they disempowering? Do you want to continue with those patterns or do you want to discontinue with those patterns? And then ultimately, what we want to do is we want to create a life inventory of the things that you want to accomplish, right? Should you even invest that money or should you use that money to go buy another business? Or should you obviously, maybe that's a great idea to save that money and put it aside. Once you're clear and once you don't have those negative emotions around money and once you can think clearly and look at it from a positive perspective, have those positive emotions, you can make much better judgments around money. Once you're a warrior and you're a magician, start making those decisions. That's who you want making decisions around money, not the innocent and the fool. Right. Although the fool can be great. You may need the fool sometimes because the fool is the person who is always, they're always looking at stuff and saying, well, this is an opportunity. Everything's an opportunity. And sometimes you may need that. You may need that carelessness in your life. But if the fool's making decisions every week, one week it's Bitcoin, the next week it's, gambling, next week it's Kalshi, the next week it's, buying stocks, that's not what you want. And those patterns really emerge from a young age. And once you start seeing those patterns, you can say, and this is not about blaming parents. It's not about blaming your mother or your father. They are who they were. I'm really fortunate to have them as parents, but they did certain things that screwed up the way that I looked at money. That's the reality. I'm not here to blame them. I'm here to, acknowledge what happened and, how do I fix it? How do I acknowledge it? Christina, I think the best analogy for this is I'd like people to be able to go back into the past, see what happened. Like maybe a little, I don't want to call it therapy, but that's basically what you're doing, right? You're going back in the past, acknowledging what happened, seeing what happened. bringing it to the present, seeing how that affected you. And the coaching model would say, okay, now you start setting goals. See, coaches don't really go into the past that much. And I don't think therapists go into the future that much. They don't really create a lot of solutions, let's say. If you could put both of those together, whereas you're looking in the past, working out what happened, bringing it to the present, creating a plan based on what happened in the past, and also based upon your values, what your goals and your objectives are, then you'll be able to map out what you want to do with that money going forward, right? It's not for somebody to tell you what to do. I'm only here to ask you the right questions so you can figure out what you want to use that money for.
Yeah, it's similar. So after I sold my company, I went back and got my hypnotherapy degree, and it's a lot of what we work with people on. So it's bringing to the front of what is the limiting belief that you have in your head, and then working on deleting that limiting belief and downloading it with something that is better serving you. So I definitely hear what you're saying and know what you're telling the audience. So it brings me to my next question. So you have all of these solutions and ideas, and you talk a lot about leaving a legacy. And in your book, you talk a lot about teaching kids. And to me, this is really important because I am a big advocate. I do actually a lot of hypnotherapy with children, and I see from the age of 0 to 7 what happens. They kind of pick up these beliefs, and then they carry them with them into their young adulthood, I guess. How do you help and talk to your kids about, you have some great ideas about working with kids and teaching them money? Because most people, what I've noticed is they don't talk to their kids about money. They don't want their kids to know how much money they make. They don't want them to know, what the house costs, what the cars cost. They're like basically walled off until they get to maybe 16 when they get a job or something. What would your advice be to parents out there listening?
So my advice has changed over the years. As my kids got older, I wanted to be transparent with them because I want them to go into the world as an adult, understanding what money is, understanding what insurance costs, understanding what cars cost. And as far as now, the kids know everything. They know what I make because I'm going to be leaving it to them. I want them to be financial stewards of those assets. I just don't want to leave them a ton of money. I want them to be responsible with that money. My oldest 4 kids, they all invest in my real estate deals. They invest their own money into my deals, and that allows them to understand the language of money and the language of investing. Your language becomes your experience. If you don't talk to them about cash flow and about physical occupancy, they're not going to know real estate. If you don't talk to them about an income statement and a balance sheet, they're not going to know about money. And that's the reality. Now, when they're younger, you don't want to inundate them. The worst thing you can do as a parent when you're young and your 5-year-old gets $100 from grandma is to take that $100 and say to her, sweetie, I'm going to put this money in a savings account for you, and you take it away from them. The kid's gonna be like, what the hell just happened? That was my money. They're putting it into it. Where's that money going? And I've done that. And for me, the simplest thing when they're young is to get a jar system, get 3 glass jars, saving, spending, and charity. Let them split up the money. Let them see the money physically, but let them spend their own money. Obviously, you want them to save a certain amount. That's money set aside for investments. You want them to spend a certain amount on whatever they want to buy because it's their money. And you want them, obviously, my third component would be charity, to be able to give it to somebody, right? And what that does, all of a sudden, it starts giving them autonomy. They start learning how to make decisions. What happens when you're 18 years old and you've never been talked about money, all of a sudden you're paralyzed. You don't know what to do. It becomes so fearful. You stop opening up the checking account. You stop paying the bills because you're so afraid. We don't want to create children like that. So, at a base level, that's where I would start. And for me, I was just fortunate to write a couple of books. We wrote a couple of kids' books as well. So the kids have been involved in my businesses. They've seen me lose money. They've seen me make money. They see me walk my properties. They're intimately involved in this Barbara 360 company. I'm building this business because I want them to learn how to become entrepreneurs. And how do you do that? You do that by showing them and by allowing them to be involved. And what I did also is I created something called the baby money soldier. It's just a concept. I know from the toy soldiers. You see, it's really incredible. But the concept is simple because we want to make learning fun for kids. Because if you're going to whip out a balance sheet most adults don't even know what a balance sheet is, right?
I was just going to say
they don't understand that. But when I give you a little toy soldier, I think of the baby money soldier as that dollar that comes into your life. Every baby money soldier that comes into your life is yours. You have control over every dollar that comes into your life. You are the general of your financial battlefield. You have control of that dollar. And the way you control the dollar dictates how well you'll do in life. Money has rules. If you're going to kill all of your baby money soldiers and buy all luxuries, guess what? They're not going to procreate. They're not going to grow. If you put a certain amount aside, then you can let those baby money soldiers grow. And as they grow, they'll procreate. They'll create more baby money soldiers. And then you can use some of those. But then at the same time, you have to know how to use them. They don't all go out onto the battlefield, right? You keep some in arrears, right? Because you need some for insurance, you need some for estate planning, and then all of a sudden the market gets good. You have some in reserve where you can deploy. So once you start making it fun for kids, they can see it tangibly. And I think adults can paint the picture of like, wow, a baby money soldier. And once you realize that you are in control, it doesn't matter how many baby money soldiers come into your life. If you're Elon Musk and you make $1 billion a year, but you spend $1 billion a year, you're going to be left with zero. Even Elon has to understand how to navigate his baby money soldiers. So if you go from that concept and understand that you are the general and you have to learn how to really direct those soldiers, those dollars, it becomes a lot easier for kids to understand the concept and for parents to teach their kids about money.
I liked what you also said. There was something about budgeting and things like that. And so you talk about people on commission or they have maybe businesses that go up and down. What would you tell somebody to do around budgeting and income that ebbs and flows?
Budgeting is such a hard term. As you said the word budgeting, I saw Hope just get that look on her face like, that does not sound pleasant. And it doesn't sound pleasant.
Insert trauma here.
Insert trauma for a lot of people. Yeah. So that's interesting. It really comes down to, for me, let's create a spending plan. Because a budget sounds more restrictive. So there's a lot of effort involved in this. I don't want to call it work. I want to call it effort. But what's holding Hope back from creating a budget or a spending plan? That's the first thing. We could tell people to create a budget and do it. But as we know, budgeting, financial plans, it's simple math. It's
Yes.
1 + 1 is 2. Why don't people do it? Let's get down to that root cause. But to that person with the spending plan, I would say create a spending plan. And it's so easy nowadays with all these different apps. You have Rocket more. I use a Rocket app. My son is 23. It's like, Dad, you're not using this thing? I'm like, no, I don't really need it because I know intuitively where my money's going. But then when I used it, I actually downloaded it 6 months ago. I'm like, damn, this thing is freaking cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it literally has every expense out there, and I can categorize every expense, and I know where every expense is going. So once you see that, it's right in front of you. And for you, once you look at it, you're like, okay, now I can direct the money. It's not like you want to limit yourself. You just want to make sure that you're spending money on Netflix. Do you really want to spend money on Netflix, or do you want to go to Disney Plus or whatever? That's what you're trying to do with the spending plan. You're just trying to control it. And as Dave Ramsey says, once you implement one, whether you want to believe it or not, 20%, you get a 20% savings, because then all of a sudden you start realizing, so I teach my kids that you need a monthly cash flow statement. You need to know how much income is coming in. You need to know what your expenses are, and you need to know what's left at the end of every month. And if you do that, and you're diligent about it, and you can raise expenses, lower expenses. But for those who ebb and flow, it's a great way to futurecast.
Yep.
It's a great way to tell you, all right, I'm making $3,000 this month. The next 2 months, I'm not making anything. I got to really save a lot of this $3,000 for the next 2 months. But getting people to do it is the hard and challenging part. That's why you really need to work on the money scripts and on the bio and all that, and see why you're holding it back. You really need to have people understand what's in it for them more than anything else. And once they see that they can actually have control, and where's that trauma coming from? Let's talk about where that trauma is coming from. In my coach teacher, Deborah Price, calls them money traumas. And I hate using that word because I like financial flashpoints better. Dr. Brad Klontz uses the word financial flashpoints, but I mean, it really is a trauma. Like you've been traumatized by that subject and you can't resolve it in your head. And it's holding you back from taking that next action. We need to resolve that because, Hope, you could be doing great for the next 3 or 4 months. You're doing your budget, everything's going well. Then all of a sudden you have something really stressful happen in your life and you fall back into those old patterns. And it's like, oh, we want to remove those old patterns. We want to create new patterns and shine the light on why it's great. And I think if you can do that, that will really solve a lot of the problems.
Got it. You talk about your first real estate investment that you ever did. It failed miserably. How did you get over that and keep going?
It was a nice sunny day in New York. I was at the restaurant. I'm sitting on one of the benches, and in strolls this nice gold Maserati. I mean, you could hear the hum of the motor. I just looked at it and I said, I want to have that car. And out strolls a guy named Mike. And from that day forward, I called him Maserati Mike. The Maserati Mike sits down next to me and pitches me a real estate deal. And I had been introduced to him by a friend. And I ended up investing with Mike. I ended up investing $172,000 with Mike. We bought a few mobile home parks. Everything went great for 6 months. After 6 months, the draws stopped. And after 12 months, foreclosure. And, for about 6 months after that, I don't want to say I was clinically depressed, but I was effing pissed. I mean, I just was. But what I realized was he was not the right partner. He was terrible. He was probably fraudulent, maybe some negligence. He was a moron. But I was the moron who invested with him. I was the one coming back to the responsibility saying, wow, I just gave this man my money. I had no idea what a mobile home park deal was. I had not even gotten on a plane and flown down to Florida to look at these mobile home parks. If I had at least done that, I probably would not have invested. I didn't know the right questions to ask. I was the innocent in that deal. My head was in the sand. I always say a person with money meets a person with experience. The person with the experience gets the money, and the person with the money gets the experience. Well, he got my money and I got the experience. And for most people, that would have been a traumatic financial flashpoint that would have, what's the word? Completely paralyzed them. But for me, once again, anger came in my life a lot. I had my mom telling me, oh, see, real estate's risky. She shouldn't have lost that money. And I am going, I'm going to show this woman that is not going to stop me. So that's one of the things. I wanted to do something against what she was doing. So is that healthy or unhealthy? I'm not sure. I use that as motivation to say, I'm going to get into this real estate thing. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to leave this restaurant, but how do I do that? And that's what motivated me ultimately to get out of that situation, to say, what's the mindset that I need? It wasn't Mike's fault. It was my fault. I stroked a check and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So I ultimately, at that point, that's when I started diving into all the different trainings on real estate, understanding that real estate's a business and success leaves clues. And I'm going to be honest with you. Most real estate investors are not rocket scientists. We're not that smart. It's like a business like anything else. It has rules. I didn't know the rules. I was trying to obfuscate or trying to go around those rules and get a shortcut. And there are no shortcuts in life. That's one thing that I learned. And once again, that word responsibility. I wanted to become successful in business. I was trying to take the shortcut.
Yeah, and I think it's important for listeners, whether they want to invest $10 or they want to invest $10 million, and it may be the first time that they're doing something. I had a similar experience to what you did, and it's important for people to go out there and find resources. So go find Gino, get coached up, get a mentor that you can trust that has the track record so that you're not going in like the innocent with your head in the sand, right? I think a lot of people make that mistake. And from what I'm understanding, it sounds like it is because you just really aren't educated and you're carrying your traumas around with you. And then you go and do these things because you're trying to prove like, oh, I know how to do this, but you really don't. So get some help.
I wanted to piggyback off of that. I had a quick question for when is the right time to reach out to enlist this type of help? Because there's so many different journeys of the people that are going to be listening. So Christina's on the end of having all these different investments and opportunities. I'm kind of in the middle. I'm high earning, but I'm still like figuring out my patterns and investing in things like that. And then other people that I know listen to us that are really just still in that fear mode. And so it's like, do you get to a certain point and then reach out to having a money coach? Or is it like, if you can do it right now, jump on it?
Can I answer that in two different ways?
Anyway, yes.
The first answer would be, I have 6 children. It was never the right time to have a kid. It just never was the right time. So it's never the right time. So the answer is whenever you're ready. Because, there's something called the change process. Prochaska and Di Clemente created this change process. There's 6 steps to it. There's pre-contemplation, then contemplation, then preparation. The 4th step is action. 80% of people are not ready to take action yet. That's the reality. It has to all start with you. I couldn't take that change until I was pissed off, until I was really ready for the change, until I read T. Harv Eker's book, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, where your fruits are in your roots. And it's all about responsibility. So for me to come out and tell everybody, you got to start right now, that would be unwise of me. That would be foolish for me to say it. I think people have to realize it. But what I would say to finish that answer is every single person needs a money coach. And I'm speaking specifically to men because most men don't want to talk about their emotions. Most men just love to shove our emotions because 2 generations ago, when my father was out farming, if he came home to his wife and said, I'm really sorry, I'm tired, I'm sorry, I'm feeling bad, that weakness will kill you. My father had to produce. He didn't have time. He lost his mom when he was 13 years old. So he didn't have time for his emotions. It was life or death back then. So I can see why we as men are programmed to be providers and to be protectors. We don't have time for our emotions. So we love to shove them down. But at a certain time, they will just come up and explode. And you don't know what the hell is going on. And it's like all of a sudden, that's what happened to me. I was suppressing them. And at a certain point in your life, they catch up to you. And we as men we're not, wired to deal with that. And when it hits, it's really confusing. We're supposed to know about money. Most of us don't know about money because it's shameful. We're supposed to be able to provide and to protect our spouses. And we can't do that. I'm failing at the restaurant. I lose 170 grand with Maserati Mike. There's a lot of shame and fear and sadness
More
around
on Mike.
More on Mike, yeah. But so I think, the short answer to your question is really, I think money coaching, I don't want anyone to do anything mechanical yet. Anybody can learn about A plus B is C. Anybody can learn about that. I think really the psychology behind it is where most of us struggle. And once we can create that psychology and work through that, then I want people to really start creating a financial foundation, really learning the steps. Because as investors, beginning investors, my first idea with Maserati Mike was I'm looking for a deal. I'm looking to make money. And that's where most of us go. I got 10 grand. Where can I put it? Wrong question. You should never ask that question, right? And I'm like, okay, you have 10 grand. Put it yourself first. Figure out what you want to do with that 10 grand and what vehicle is it that you want to drive. Is it a stock? Is it a bond? Is it a business? Is it a real estate deal? That's where you need to get clear on. And I think most people skip those parts because it's hard to do that work.
Yeah. Well, and not to hijack again, but I just wanted to add one little story that came to mind recently that I think goes in line with everything you're saying and the work that you're doing from the psychological perspective. So the pattern, and I'll put myself out there vulnerably, the pattern that I have is that I have no problem making money. I have had a business. I've had high earning corporate jobs. Opportunities just flow to me. I'm an incredibly hard worker. People love working me, yada, yada, toot my own horn. But keeping money in my account and like putting it into investment, it's like I feel that's where the scarcity comes. I don't want to keep it. I'm scared it's going to go away. So if I don't spend it or reinvest it or do something with it, then it's bad. And so I did this really, and again, we're both, to give you context too, I'm also a hypnotherapist. That's kind of how Christina and I connected and started this podcast. But I've been really reflecting on those patterns and did a deep meditation, and this memory popped up. And it was when I was like 11 years old. I had this big trip to go fly by myself to see my best friend in Florida. And my parents, I'd like saved up this little wad of like $200. And it was in my little purse. And my parents were like, Always like, you always are so quick to spend your money, Christine. It's like, that's the messaging I got, is like, I'm always like making it, but it's like, wow, you just let it burn a hole in your pocket. So I have all this shame around it. And then I go on this trip. I intentionally like don't spend any of it. I'm like very frugal because I wanted to come back and show my parents like I'm not that, I'm responsible. Again, 11 years old. On the flight home, I fall asleep because I'm super tired. And as I'm getting off the plane, I leave my purse on the plane. And I, of course, immediately when I'm in the car, I realize what happens and I call the airport, lost and found, and they find my purse. But of course, the money was taken out of it.
Oh,
That is my huge flashpoint. Or is that what you're calling it? Flashpoint?
yes, a financial flashpoint.
Financial-
Well, you can call it either, or a trauma. That is a massive trauma for you.
Well, and I didn't realize because it came to me and I was like, why would I remember this? Because I'm putting all this energy to like rewire. And I don't know what to make of it still. So I'm like, this has literally happened to me last week. So I'm just curious if you can play with that as an example.
Yeah. I mean, the way I would play with this, I would actually sit with that emotion, right? Most men, we don't like to sit with the emotion. Now, we could sit too long with the emotion and then it could just completely take over our lives and our testosterone drops, our estrogen rises, and our whole body gets screwed up, right? That's what ends up happening. And at a certain level, you would say to a man, you have to suck it up and do it. That's how we're wired. We have to do things. But in the context of this, you're sitting with it. There's shame around that. Like, if you think about it, you have to give yourself permission. You have to go back and say to yourself, I was an 11-year-old little girl. I got this messaging from my parents. Why did they look at it from their perspective? Why were they giving you that messaging, right? That's what I would say is they had the scarcity. They had the fear. Do I have to take that messaging to me? And I was only 11 years old. I tried to do everything that I could. I was only 11. And I think once you start looking at that, and the bigger point now is that if somebody's listening to this, you're not going to go out and create a financial plan and do what is quote unquote responsible because you're still hung up on this trauma, on this memory. So then we would continue to work through that mother, father. What other habits or what other disempowering behaviors or beliefs have you had? Because I'm sure that's not the only one. I'm sure there are other ones out there. And you start pulling the thread on that and you start peeling back the onion. It's a beautiful thing because then all of a sudden you can just feel relieved and it's not your fault. First of all, you're 11 years old on a plane. I won't even drop my 11-year-old off to youth group by herself, let alone let an 11-year-old get on a plane by themselves. Like, I would never do that. That's just me as a parent. So I have so much sympathy for that 11-year-old little girl getting on a plane all by herself and being responsible and actually not spending the money and then doing what a lot of adults do, which is we lose things. And then you're all blaming, you're putting so much pressure on yourself. So you can see as an adult, every time you get that money, you don't want to deal with it. You're sort of being an innocent. You're sort of just trying to get rid of it. And it's really wild how that one memory can really unconsciously shape your patterns and your behaviors when you become an adult.
Absolutely. It's so
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. It was just such an unusual, like, how could that really affect what I'm working through and like having all these breakthroughs with my financial landscape now. And it's just this conversation so inspiring that I was just like, okay, I probably should share that. So thank you.
No, and Hope, one other thing I would say is, as the creator artist, as the one who's making the money, what do you like to do with your money? Where do you want to invest it? Where do you see that money going? Don't listen to a financial planner and have them say, oh, you need to do 60-40 stocks, bonds. I wouldn't go that far yet. I would just start learning about what kind of investments do I want to invest in? Where do I see myself putting my money and enjoying those investments? And then ultimately learning about it, right? Because that's what you want to do. You want to learn about the investments and then obviously start investing from it. But you really need to continue to reflect upon that flashpoint. And maybe there's other ones that happened in your life that are continuing that pattern.
It's amazing. And even just saying that, like giving people the power to explore what you actually want to invest in, even the language you used as you said that, it made me so much more excited. It's, it's like, wow, actually, wait, I can put my money into things that I love. It's not this, I come from a super traditional conservative financial background where you don't even think that's an option. So it's
dude.
really an incredible shift just from the language perspective.
Let's pull that thread. When you pull that thread, all of a sudden people are telling you what to do and where to put your money. So if you come from that that's a flashpoint, that's a trauma, because all of a sudden you don't have autonomy over your decisions, right? So why do you want to put money somewhere when someone's telling you what to do? You'd rather just get rid of that money. That's the connection that I'm making, right? It's like, wow. And I think as a coach or as a therapist, you're not here to tell you what to do. I'm just here to open a door for you and to have you explore, because you have the answers inside of you. That's the thing. I can ask you the questions. You have the answers. I want you to be excited about. Investing should be fun. I love multifamily. I love what it does for me. I love the vehicle itself. I love how it creates wealth. I love building businesses. I like putting my money there. I'm not putting my money in Apple stock. I'm just not. That doesn't excite me. I'm sorry. It just doesn't. To do that because I want them to learn all the different areas of investing. But for me, man, if I'm going to invest in something, I want to be able to enjoy that. It really comes down to happy money. And if I get really good at something that I enjoy, then I'll just continue to do it. It won't be a problem for me.
Yeah, it's true. So I'm on a syndication group. So we pull a bunch of women, we teach other women how to invest, and then we pool our money together and write checks. And I've really, for all the screening that I do, I am really focused on like mindset and just helping the communities and things like that. So when I get to screen those companies, I get super excited. And I have to tone it down just a little bit because I'm so excited. I'm like, oh yeah, every company, let's invest in. But, it's important though to be excited about it so that you know that it aligns with you and your, creative energy. So great.
You had a little fool there because you're excited about everything, right? But at the same time, you have to actually elicit the warrior and do the work, right? And you have the magician working in the back end because you really love that. So you see the power in that is if you can direct the warrior, have the warrior do the work. The fool where, hey, things are an opportunity, but the fool's not going to make the decision. The warrior is going to make the decision. And I'm making this decision because the magician is there saying that, hey, Christina, we love this multifamily thing and we love having women. We love getting women together. We love pulling their money together. So when you start doing that, all of a sudden that's happy money. That's positive energy. That's fun. And to me, that is what, positive investing looks like.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great. So the last part of the podcast, let's talk a little bit about legacy. So we've had people on talking about trusts and family legacy and things like that. Tell us what your viewpoint on leaving a legacy for your family is and how you do it and what that means to you.
I thought that's what that was, to be honest with you. When you were talking about legacy early on, to me, it was all about trusts and wills and power over attorneys and just the mechanical components about it. But when I dug in deeper and I started to make serious wealth, I was like, okay, great. The financial aspect is awesome, but there's two other pillars. I mean, there's the the faith and the values pillar as far as our family, and then there's the family leadership. So it's really broken down to me into three pillars. The financial is important. We need to teach the kids financial. We need to perpetuate that. But from the legacy perspective, as far as values goes, I want to be able to pass on the values that I have in this generation to my children and to their grandkids, and to continue to perpetuate that and not go shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. We see that because you see the money being passed around, whether it's the Vanderbilts, as you saw how they were extremely wealthy, but within 3 or 4 generations, they had gone shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves because they didn't pass the values of what the family looked like. That money will burn off. That's important. And the second component is that family leadership. For me, it's all about the rhythms the family does. It comes down to 2 parts. It's the human capital and the intellectual capital. Now, the human capital is the family itself. Like every single one of my kids has their own unique skills. I want them to contribute to the legacy. One of them loves to do pottery, loves the farm. Another one's a great massage therapist. Another one loves arts and crafts. Another one is really good in business. Another one's going to be a scholar. That's all lending to the value of the legacy and to continue to perpetuate that. That's important. The second component that I mentioned was the intellectual capital, which was like the value, the knowledge that you're passing from one generation to the next. So that's all of our writings. That's all the stuff that I'm teaching them. I've created a financial independence course for my kids. I keep doing these podcasts. I write books. That's all stuff that's going to be passed from one generation to the next. I'm actually doing a podcast with my son, who's 23 years old. We call it the Happy Money Podcast. So hopefully when he has kids, their kids are going to see their dad and their grandfather talking about money. Now, how cool is that for
so
legacy?
amazing.
Yeah,
That's something that's really
So
awesome.
generationally healing.
Yes, and that's what you want. And I'm trying to create a healthy pattern around money, right? Because I adopted those negative patterns, but I'm trying to create that pattern of positivity around money. But it's not just around the money. There's other components. There's the family component, the leadership component, and the financial component. If you can put all three of those around legacy, you're not just stroking a check at the end of your life. You're directing that legacy to go where you want it to go. And you also need to incorporate your children and your, the other family members in it and really make it, not just decisions based upon you. And it's hard because I'm the one who made this money over the last several years. And now I have to think, how are we going to direct this? How are we going to create impact with this? And the kids have some really incredible ideas. I would tell you both to listen to a gentleman named David Green from Hobby Lobby. That dude he is just incredible. I mean, his companies, they gross $7 billion a year. They net $1 billion a year, and they're a private company still. And his whole idea about legacy is, he doesn't basically own anything. It's God that owns everything, which I think is pretty cool. I mean, that's what I've come to the realization. It's been hard because I've got pride, I got ego. These properties are mine. Yeah, but are they mine? That's what I've come to the realization. But at the time, I'm still a steward of them, and I have to be a steward of them, and I have to steward my children to learn all about that. And once you come from that mindset, and his whole family's built upon legacy, and his whole family's built upon charity and doing the right thing. So I just want my kids to see that as a role model and to have that imprinted upon our family. And I think if anybody listening to this can really resonate with that, you're basically trying to build a family office. We can all have quote unquote family offices as far as our family unit. We may not have $100 million, even if you have $100,000. If you start implementing these lessons and these laws and these rules, you can incorporate your own tiny little family office, and you can start perpetuating that legacy for the next generation.
Yeah, I love that when you said, you basically don't own anything, because we walk around thinking like, oh, we own our house, we own our car, we own this piece of whatever, but really you can't die. You don't die with it. So what do you do with it? You have this legacy that you're building, and what's the avenue that you do that with? It sounds like for you, it's, writing books, doing these podcasts. And I know for other people, we've been down this road with trusts and teaching our kids every quarter, this is what we have in the trust. This is what you're going to get. This is how we're implementing, investing and different things like that. And in the end, a good example that I can give the listeners is my wedding ring. So we had this whole conversation about my wedding ring being in the trust, and basically the trust owns it and people can borrow it from the trust. And so it goes down, whoever wants to wear it can wear it. But it always goes back to the trust, because it's never going to be something that somebody owns. Even I don't own it, right? So right now I'm borrowing it. I'm wearing it, but I don't own it. So can you talk to me a little bit about how you do that with your family?
Yeah, I want to give you a cautionary tale on why anybody listening to this, they should not put this off, because it's really important. It was in 2007 in the summertime. I was at my parents' house, and my dad was, he was sick. He had the last month or two to live. And at the house, we had my good friend of mine who was a priest, give my dad last rites. And we had the CPA there. And the CPA was doing the trust work. And I had my mom there. And, my brother and all our kids were there. And I just remember the sadness and just how confused my mom was. And I'm saying to myself, why did we wait till the last minute to create an irrevocable trust? Like, what was the reasoning behind that? And the worst part about it was, after my dad passed away, my mom she didn't grieve properly. I mean, we had these trusts open way too long. My dad's name on checks way too long, and I just didn't understand why. And I think it's because she didn't want to close that chapter on his life. She didn't have the proper way to say goodbye to him. And I don't want anybody to be caught that way, be caught unprepared, because that's what ends up happening. I know we're busy. I know we don't have the time. But if you're a person who is responsible, if you're a person who has control, those are your values, you don't want to leave that kind of mess to the next generation. It is incumbent upon you to start small. And whether you have a will, whether you have guardianship of your children, how that all works out at the very beginning, you need to start. And if you have started, you make sure you have to review it at least once a year. That's at the very least. So for our children, to answer your question specifically, for our kids, they know everything that I make. I've got everything on spreadsheets. I've got stuff on hard copies, and I've got stuff online. We actually have our quarterly meeting next week, Wednesday at 5 o'clock. Everyone's there. I whip open the computer. I've actually created a spousal lifetime access trust, which is a complete nightmare. That took me forever because I have so many different assets. So putting that to avoid estate taxes, we're doing that. So my wife has that. I have to show the kids where that is. Then I have other assets. My kids know where all the bank accounts are because if something happens to me, they know where all the life insurances are. They know where all the mortgages are. They know where all the insurances are. Everything's laid out for them. And we talk about them. And it's important to have these conversations with the kids because if something ultimately does happen, they're like a deer in headlights. Like they've just lost a parent. They don't know what's going on. So I want to get them prepared. And as they start getting married, as they start having kids, they'll know how to make these decisions. And it's important. And I want to be able to have these discussions with them every quarter of, oh, we've got this money set aside. What do we want to do? Where are we going to be able to deploy this capital as far as, charitable? That's important to me. And oh, by the way, we've got a deal coming up. Anybody want to put money into this deal? So every quarter we get together and have these quarterly meetings. But I think what everybody should focus on when they're starting this, if you're a family office and you have that vision and you want that legacy component, running a family is very similar to running a business. Every successful business has core values. We have a mission statement. We have governance. I think every family should have the same thing. You should have your core values for your family. For us, it's God first. For us, it's stewardship. We have our core values and we go over them. And that's what we're talking about with that intellectual capital and the values passing from one generation to the next, because the next generation needs to know what these families' values were based upon and needs to know that we're actually acting upon these family values. So starting that with the family, it takes time to get to that level. So for you to get to that level, create the foundation, right? What you had said with the trusts, with the wills and with the power of attorneys and the healthcare proxies, that's at a bare minimum. But if you really want to start creating a great legacy, taking that legacy to the next level with these rhythms, these cadences of accountabilities that you have in your business, you have weekly calls with your team members, you have daily huddles and end of days. Why aren't you having that with your family? I mean, that's just, to me, that's, for us, we have dinner every night. So that's sort of our end of days. But I mean, at the very least, quarterly planning. We have quarterly planning. We have yearly meetings. We should have that with our families as well.
Yeah. And I think it's really important to add to, even if you don't have a family, to do that for yourself, and start if you're even just alone and know what does your company look like as a solo entrepreneur or whatever, and take the time to do it because we don't make that time a lot of the time. So it's important to set aside that time. And if you have to, if you do have a family and you have a busy life and two working parents and, a couple kids that you have to get to sports and stuff like that, it's okay to take a weekend off and say, you know what, we can't show up to these things. We're going to set aside this time to plan for our family and our legacy. And I don't think people allow themselves that space enough because our life our society and our community, I think we're getting a lot better, but we push people to burnout and people have to take their time back and their power back. So I love it.
Why are we doing that though? That's the question. Like Hope said before, why is that happening in society? Because some of things that happened in our childhood, are we running away from the way we were raised by our parents? Or are we wanting to hang out and to, follow what the Joneses are doing? It comes down, honestly, to me, being really clear on what your values are. If you really value family and that importance and faith, it's going to be conflicting. You're going to have those conflicting things. It's okay to do certain things, but you need to have certain times. And that's why people feel guilty or they feel shameful because they're not doing it. They're going against what their values are because they're going with what somebody has to say. I'll give you a quick example. When we started homeschooling back in like 2005 or 6, that was like the most unpopular thing to do back then. Like everyone made fun of me. It was like the funniest thing in the world. Like I'd have these big ass construction guys at the restaurant all making fun of me and going, what's the matter? Your kids, you know? And it was hard. It was so hard to do that. I knew superintendents who would come in and eat at the restaurant and they're like, where do your kids go to school? And I'm like, 27, Kayla. It was just awkward. But I knew that was the right thing for us to do for our family. And it's really difficult sometimes to do the right thing. But if you know what your values are and you know that you're doing it for your values, it becomes in my opinion, it becomes a little bit easier, a little bit more tolerable. And after all these years, I ultimately, knew that was the right decision for us.
100%. I wish I would have figured that out a lot earlier in life. So anybody listening, listen and, feel that in your heart and know it's the right thing. Just with my kids, I realized that. And one of our values is freedom. And so having them go to school at a public school all day, every day wasn't aligning with our values. And so I gave them both the option to homeschool. One of them took it, one of them stayed. And it's been the best thing that I've ever done for my children, because the one that decided to stay, he's making friends. The one that decided to homeschool, people are like, wow, he's a totally different kid and he needed that. So
yes.
Yeah.
So I like to preface this by saying that I sound cool and it sounds as if like I was the one that made these decisions. It really was my wife. I have to admit, like I was getting hammered. I'm like, you sure we can so it was really her. I want to give her all the credit for that because it was really hard the first couple of years. I have my Italian mother saying, are they going to get social? I mean, and like, no one asked about the education aspect of it. Everyone was asked about the social. So I'm like, okay, that may be the cue. But there was a lot of pressure, a lot of social and a lot of peer pressure, especially from my family. But my wife knew that was the right decision. And that's what I think couples and teams do. I knew that she was so geared up for it. She was so believed in it that I trusted her. Just like she trusted me when I left the restaurant. And that's why I'm like, ultimately, okay, let's give this a chance. What's the worst thing that can happen? After 2 years, if the project fails, we'll put her into school. But at least have that option. But really do what Christina did. Be really clear about what you want your family to look like and what your goals and what your objectives are, and work through your values.
Awesome. Well, Hope, you got any other questions?
How do we get them sign up for money coaching right now?
Yeah, it's interesting. I love money coaching, and I got into it because I can teach anybody to buy a real estate deal. And it's just not fun because some people will really take the advice and run with it. And there will be some people like Hope who will be like, I can't do it. I just don't want to spend the money. I want to invest. And it was frustrating for me because I know that Hope has all of the gifts, all the talent. She's got the balance sheet, but I know that little bit of money coaching would give her clarity and would give her an understanding, even to say, do I want to invest in multifamily? That's like the bigger question. Where do I want to direct my dollars? So for money coaching, if they want to learn more, just tell them to go to barbaro360.com. There's a money quiz on there. If you want to take that money quiz just to learn a little bit more about your relationship with money, you can start there.
Awesome. That'll all be in our show notes so people can find you easily and effortlessly. My last question before we end is, if you take away your titles, father, investor, owner, whatever, who are you underneath it all?
That is a great question. If you give me a second to think about that, who am I? I'm just a guy that's trying to figure it out. I think that we all think everyone else has got it figured out. I'm just sort of winging it every day, and I'm trying to find out what I'm here for. I'm really ultimately trying to figure out what my purpose is, and I still haven't really figured that out yet at this advanced age. So for anybody out there trying to think that they've got it, that they think they need to have it figured out, to me, that's not what life is all about. To me, life is just taking challenges and getting a little uncomfortable. And as you get uncomfortable, that's where you start to grow and that's where you start to learn. And the journey is never over. I went from accountant to pizza guy to real estate guy to podcaster, now to a company that has family family involved with money coaching. It's just the journey's evolved. So to me, I don't know other than, like you said, taking away those titles. I think being a father of 6 is probably my most important title.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I agree. It's all about the journey. It's not about the destination in life. So thank you so much, Gino, for being here. Listeners, we appreciate you. And thank you so much for listening to us. Like I said, we'll have Gino in the show notes. So check him out. Take that money quiz. And we love you all. Have a beautiful day.